Hello, welcome to Aging Well in America. I'm Anne-Marie Gattari, your host. Every day, 6,000 to 7,000 people in the United States turn 65 years old. 5.5 million people today are 85 years old or older. By the year 2050, that number will grow to 20. 20 million people will be 85 years old or older. Are we ready? Is America ready? There's so much good work going on around the world, around the country, and right here in our very own community. And I have with us today some very dedicated people who are doing some of those very good works. And I would like to introduce to you members of the Michigan Parkinson Foundation. Mr. John Boll, who is the second chairman of the foundation, Ms. Debbie Orloff, who is the CEO, and Mr. Tom Cracchiolo. Thank you so much. And Mr. Cracchiolo, you are the founding chairman of this important foundation, which started in 1983. So we have a lot to talk about because this is a very storied organization and not that old of an organization. But what we'd like to mention right off the bat is an upcoming event, June 1st. It's going to be at South Lake Schools Administration Building, and it's a fun run, a walkathon for children, and it's going to, there we have it on the screen, and it's going to raise money for the Michigan Parkinson Foundation. So we're very pleased to be able to talk about that and why that's so important. So, Debbie, start with just kind of an overview of what is Parkinson.
Parkinson's is a chronic neurological degenerative disease, and it's second most common neurological degenerative disease after Alzheimer's. So it's actually more common than people realize, and we think that in Michigan there's 30,000 people with Parkinson's. It's a slowly progressive disease. You do not die of Parkinson's. However, it gradually robs you of your independence over time. It can be very effectively controlled by medication and sometimes surgery.
Talk to us about some of those conditions where and how it can be controlled in addition to the medication.
Okay.
Diet and exercise help as well?
Well, they're finding right now that exercise is very helpful and could be protective for Parkinson's symptoms. I'd just like to mention a couple of the symptoms that people have. They call it a movement disorder because, like I mentioned, it's a slowly progressive disease, and the first symptoms that you really notice could be a tremor at rest, and it's called a pill rolling tremor. All that
pill rolling. What does that mean?
Like your hand, you're rolling pills in your hand.
Interesting.
This is what it's called. Not all conditions that have a tremor are Parkinson's.
Sure.
This is Katharine Hepburn, for example, did not have Parkinson's disease. She had what's called essential tremor, which is a hereditary disease. Parkinson's is not hereditary.
I see.
But the tremor there is when you go to pick up something, your hand shakes. With Parkinson's, it's more when you go to pick something up, your hand stops shaking.
Interesting. So if the hand is doing something, the tremor ceases,
goes away, seems to go away.
When it's resting.
And depression is a big problem.
How so? Talk to us about that.
Well,
Tom.
Debbie, you better take over on that one, depression. With all of these problems that a person has,
sure,
which also constipation is a problem with these people. And now you're fighting constantly, every minute, every hour of the day, trying to survive and trying to have some semblance of a quality of life. And naturally, it wears on you, and this is a problem.
That's very
depression.
understandable.
So it's a multi-stage situation. Then they've got to try to fight the depression, not only the ailments that they have.
So I had read that a majority, a big percentage of people who have Parkinson's are over 60. but certainly onset very much younger is
The average age of onset is about 58.
it is. Okay.
And it's been known to be a disease of older people, but there are many people that are younger, for example, Michael J. Fox, who developed Parkinson's under 40. I'd like to get back just for a minute to the symptoms.
Please.
I mentioned it's a movement disorder. It's called a movement disorder. So there's a tremor at rest as one symptom, problems with slow movement, everything slowing down, and that can happen any place in your body. Also rigidity of movement, and later problem is a problem with balance. And what they're finding more now is that Parkinson's is more than a movement disorder. Like Tom said, there's also the depression, constipation, problems with sleep, also a loss of sense of smell, which affects appetite and so on. And these problems can be even more difficult to manage than the movement disorder.
No, you mentioned Alzheimer's as one that you might compare it with, but cognitive memory issues not a symptom?
It can be at a later point. Not everybody with Parkinson's ends up with a dementia. It is not the same type of dementia as Alzheimer's.
Got it, even though it is neurological.
Right.
Okay.
And Parkinson's disease is managed primarily by medication and also exercise, physical and occupational therapy,
Sure.
speech therapy, mental health therapy, and a lot of support from others.
Sure, a lot of support.
Yes.
Which gets us to the foundation. And the story of how this foundation was founded is fascinating. And that's what I'd like to ask you about now. Tom,
Well,
would you start, please?
Dr. Ray Bauer called me once. He wanted to break bread, and I said, sure. And breaking bread is a nice way to talk and to find out about him and him to find out about me. And I didn't really know what this was all about, and I felt I'm going to have to make some kind of commitments. So he came, and then he had on a brace across his chest because he was suffering from multiple myeloma. And he had, theoretically at that point, 7 months to live. Now this, and the reason for the brace is to support the bone structure because the disease is very debilitating and breaking bones is very common with people of this type of disorder. So Ray is a superhuman being. He is compassionate about people. He doubles up on the golden rule, the part that says, give unto others. He's always giving unto others and trying desperately to get this organization going by developing a good board and helping those. There was nobody in Michigan, no organization in Michigan. New York had an organization, and the big states had organizations. We had nothing here.
So the Parkinson community was splintered then, would you say, around the country?
I guess so. Yes,
Yeah.
Michigan.
So
Michigan was a little baby that they forgot about. Evidently.
Yeah. And Dr. Ray Bauer, just to put the story in perspective, was a very well-known neurologist in the area, and this was in the early 80s?
He was vice chairman of the neurology department, vice chairman of
Wayne State.
Which was that?
At Wayne State
At
and
Wayne
at
State
Harper.
University also. Yes, he was very well known.
Okay, and a friend of yours from your church?
Yes, friend.
Okay.
Friend. But a very compassionate person, like I said, and always wanted to help. And so he said, will you help? And I said, sure. And of course, we looked at what we had to work with, and there was nothing to work with. There was no rules and regulations. There was no guidelines. There was no goals and objectives. So we had to start from scratch and writing down what we want to accomplish with this organization.
Sure.
And the most important thing at that point was developing a board, so a strong board. And that's when we called John Boll.
Okay.
And John entered the picture. We had lunch And John's story is interesting. I like to hear that story.
I would too.
Yes, I got that call as Tom did, but this time when Tom called me, he asked to have lunch, which was quite unusual. We were good social friends, but not to go to lunch. Our businesses were unrelated, so at any rate, it ended up where I agreed to go to lunch, and of course I was suspicious as to what the luncheon might be that might involve time. Many times it involves a commitment, a financial commitment. But I knowing Tom as I did, I decided that I would meet him. And on the way there, I developed a half a dozen reasons why I couldn't be on a board or why I couldn't help them financially. And then I arrived at the luncheon, and Tom introduced me to Dr. Bauer. And it was very evident that he was wearing something unusual in that he had a steel bar that ran from his throat area down to the pelvis, and it had leather straps that went around the back. And of course, Dr. Bauer realized that that was an unusual device, and so he immediately explains it to you. And he tells you the reason he's wearing it is that his spine is not able to support his body anymore, and that he needed this steel brace and the leather straps to help support his back. So with that, I said, "Oh boy, that takes care of a couple of my reasons why I can't." And at any rate, we sat down and got talking, and began to understand what it is that they were about to set up and try to accomplish. And I became more and more interested as the luncheon went on. And finally, the question came, all my reasons for not being able to help on this board or financially had all gone away. Mm-hmm. And I said, if a man like him, with a short period of life left, mm-hmm. Could commit himself to do something like this, that the least I could do is to help him out and do what I could. So I, in turn, agreed to be a board member.
Okay. Did you know anything about Parkinson's at that time?
No, I didn't know anything about Parkinson's. I had nobody, no friends or anyone that at that time had Parkinson's. So it was all new to me.
And I'm sure, as you had alluded to, your time and the requests of your time and your support were probably quite broad. A lot of people asked you to help. And as you said, you went with the list of reasons why you couldn't, but Dr. Bauer changed your mind on the spot.
Yeah, he did, and he brought me around from all the reasons I couldn't do this to a place where I began to think about how I could help. Mm-hmm. And rather think of it in a negative sense, sure. He turned me around to think about how can I be of service. If this man can do this, then I want to be part of it. And that was the big change.
John, I gotta say this about John without trying to embarrass him. And John is a very calm, deliberate person, and he has a decisive, invisive mind. He can come to the core of a problem quickly, very quickly. Mm-hmm. During that meeting, he's asking us questions mm-hmm. about, did you try this? Did you do this? Did you call so-and-so? And immediately he is starting to help us, even at the meeting.
Sure.
And he's been a great help for the Parkinson Foundation. Great help.
So the foundation then was born, literally at that meeting, would you say, or?
No, well, actually, it was very interesting. Tom and John are have really set the standard, I think, for what we're all about. There was nothing for people with Parkinson's, and the cry came from them in terms of, help us, we need something. And it's been all volunteers that have helped to create programs and services for people with Parkinson's. And it's that giving and getting, with Dr. Bauer, getting beyond the fact that you have he had a life-threatening disease, basically. But people have really gathered together across the state in order to help develop programs. We started with one support group. It started over here at the Whittier, over by the river, and it was started by a lady with Parkinson's, and Dr. Bauer used to come and play his guitar and have them sing, and now we have music therapy, so he was a predecessor for that. But learning, and he'd give talks about Parkinson's to the people, helping them to understand it. We have volunteers, health professionals that come to the support group meetings. We now have about 58 support groups entirely across the state. It's manned by volunteers. Our office is very small. We only have 2 full-time, 2 part-time people, but it's a combination of people with Parkinson's and generous people from the community that have come together to help us sustain an organization for 30 years, and it's our 30th anniversary.
In that beginning, we leaned on Harper Hospital a little bit, and they gave us an office, a meeting room, heat, light, power, telephone. They were very, very nice for us. We had no funding. We had nothing. we had a willingness to help people, and we started in that regard. But the initial board was a strong board. We had Ken Mead, who later became chairman. This is the East Side board. Art Van Enselander was a member of the board. Dr. Jesse Cardillo,
Herb Steiger.
Herb Steiger, I'm sorry, that's the name I was looking for. Mike Timmis. And then I've got to just mention this. We have on the west side was Debbie. By the way, Debbie has an RN and a master's degree in public health, so she was ideal for the Parkinson Foundation. We had a lady by the name of Gina Bedrosian. She had Parkinson's, and she taught yoga to the Parkinsonians. And she came to every meeting elegantly dressed. And you could see the problems with Parkinson's at her at the meeting, But here's a lady that just continued to work and just to give other people the ability to learn how to remain calm, the yoga situation, how to remain calm. And she was a fabulous, fantastic lady, always giving.
That's terrific.
It was the hope also. People gave each other hope.
Right.
You had mentioned, was it the first meeting or one of your first meetings, community meeting where 250 people attended?
We had, at Harper, we had some publicity. And Harper PR department, and within 2 months, 250 people called up from all over the state. So we held 2 education sessions. Dr. Bauer was just out of the hospital. It was very weak, but he insisted on doing those programs. And people called out from the audience, we want more, we want support groups. So it was a swelling up.
Truly
from
grassroots.
them. Truly grassroots.
So from their 58 support groups today,
Right.
Yeah.
2 are on the side of town, did you say?
There's more than 2, but there's one, a young onset at South Lake Schools.
Okay.
There's this, the east side that meets at St. Michael's Church. There's the Sharing and Caring that meets at Grosse Pointe Woods. We also have downtown Detroit, etc.
So there's the website and the phone number on our screen to learn where and when the meetings are. We encourage our viewers to call the 248-433-1011 or go to the website parkinsonsmi.org for more information about where the support groups are and when they meet.
We still have educational programs. Our professional advisory board is
What are some of
very
the
active.
educational programs, Debbie? Tell
Well,
us
one
a little
is
bit
still
about
the
those.
Living with Parkinson's that we started with 30 years ago. We also have an orientation to Parkinson's. We're having some major conferences. One will be in Troy in July.
Okay.
We have a messenger, a newsletter, which was started on a mimeograph paper back in 1983.
Mimeograph. There's a
Do you
word you
remember?
don't hear so much anymore.
We have
Yeah.
pictures of our esteemed chairman. They were at every event. Do you remember some of them too?
Yeah, very much so.
And the website.
Yeah.
Anne Marie, you want to mention we have a fabulous website.
Yes,
Fabulous.
parkinsonsmi.org, the website, which has all of these, all this information that you're speaking of, and more educational. I'm curious to hear a story that touched either of you personally, maybe someone you met through the organization through these 30 years who has really served as an inspiration, maybe besides Dr. Bauer, who obviously
Yeah.
Started it all. but-
Yes. In fact, that was the first time I had met anybody that was related to or worked with people that had Parkinson's. But then after that, I began to identify and with the purpose of wanting to introduce them to the foundation, others that had Parkinson's, just in my circle of friends. So today, I believe that we have maybe a dozen people that we associate with as friends that are Parkinson's, all have Parkinson's. And so it caused me to become more aware. And I think that was one of the things we found that was really missing, was a place for information. So often when we see a doctor and they announce that we have this problem or that, immediately we think about, well, where can I get a second opinion? And it was hard to get a good source for a second opinion. And so that's why they were so anxious to see us develop a program where they could come and ask questions and get some peace of mind, because it's as Tom said earlier, that's the most difficult part is to be told you have something that there's no cure for, and to try to deal with it mentally.
And know that you're going to be living out your life, trying to maintain and do it well. I'd like to ask you, Tom, a little bit about the funding for the foundation. Where does the funding come from? And you're smiling. It looks like it's one of your favorite topics. And how can people who want to help?
The funding is all private. 99% is private funding right now. So it's the walkathons, it's the affairs that are put on, and anything special other than that in funding?
General donations.
Just general donations that come from the public. It's not government supported by any means, unfortunately. So it's a task to. You got to have a structure, which is a director, and Debbie's doing that now, and she's doing a fabulous job with some help in the office, and in order to keep the website up, in order to put out publications, in order to get all that information to all of the board members and the advisory board and the medical board. So there's some funding that's required, and it's always a task.
I think as board members, and I know, as I mentioned, the immediate thought that came to me is, okay, this is going to, I'm sure, involve some financial commitment. And that's very true when you are asked to serve on a board, that you need to know that there would be a financial commitment. And so we then, when we were seeking others to serve on the board, would ask ourselves, can they help us out financially? And and that would really be a deciding factor in, as to whether we might ask them to serve on the board, because it was so important to get some financial support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds like you've been very fortunate to have a very generous support board, and both in terms of financial and time.
The
that you've grown.
community has been phenomenal. Our board is very diverse right now. We have, because we have so many support groups, we've decided and divided the state into regions, and each region elects a representative to sit on the board.
Excellent.
So everybody has a chance to, it's our entire community.
I understand.
They have a chance to help to plan and have a say-so.
Great.
So
We've come to almost the end of our program, if you can believe it. Debbie, I'd like to ask you if you wouldn't mind a couple of final words on somebody who thinks they may have it. What are symptoms, and what's the hope? What's the thing they can look forward to?
well, first of all, you don't die of Parkinson's, and it's very manageable. I think the biggest thing is the fear. And like Tom was saying at the very beginning, people get very depressed with a chronic illness. We're here to help in any way that we can with education, support, and research, and resources. And it started 30 years ago because of a physician who was very well known in Parkinson's, getting together his friends and reaching out into the community, and also with healthcare professionals. And we're very proud of the fact that we represent all healthcare professionals, not just one organization.
That's terrific.
So please give us a call.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
God bless you, 30 years old. That's amazing. And the important event coming up on June 1st here on the east side, and June 2nd on the west side. The information is at the Parkinsons website, as well as the telephone number that we've given you throughout the program. So thank you again, and
Thank
God
you.
bless you both.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Debbie.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Okay.